I'm Professor Bob Bowie, and I'm introducing to you the Text and Teachers Research Project funded by Cullen St Gabriel's, led by Canterbury Christ Church University with Farad Panjwani from University College London. The project ran between 2018 and 2020. An advisor to the project, Dr. Margaret Carswell of Australian Catholic University, a leading scholar in international research in teaching sacred texts, Margaret often says that sacred texts are meanings wrapped in words. And she thinks we can learn rich things about those texts by understanding the context in which texts are written, the contexts in which they are found to have meanings for communities, and the context of the pupil or student who reads them now in their worldview. Everyone can reflect on their own encounter with texts, whatever their background or belief, and some texts have had an enduring impact on the world and its communities, sometimes in dramatic ways. For me, hermeneutics is clearly a project of Ezra. At the time of the Babylonian Empire, when he reflected with his religious community on how they were to make sense of their separation from Jerusalem, and the narrative of Moses that he used in that reflection. And I was reminded of that watching a lesson in a school in a poor corner of London as the lesson turned to Martin Luther King and the words where he reflected on that Moses narrative in that seminal speech in the history of civil rights. He was repeating a practice developed by Ezra and others over time, and as the lesson started to draw to a close, in a mostly BAME multi-religious class of young scholars, one pupil began to reflect on her own life experience and wondered if those words had new meaning for her in her context. It struck me that I was witnessing the turning spiral of contextualization in the rereaders in front of me as old words provoked meanings newly revealed. Symbolic meaning was important for Origen in the early centuries of Christianity in the interpretation of Genesis, as it was later for Calvin. As we were all on this project reminded about by one of the other project advisors, Mike Otter, and the resource he shared with us produced by Bible Society and available for download now. The modern science-religion puzzle has been provoking discussion for millennia. And as my co-researcher Dr. Farad Panjwani from UCL's Centre for the Study of Education in Muslim Contexts would remind us, this is not a matter exclusive to Christianity. Consider the ways different Muslim cultures and communities reflect and interpret their sacred texts on matters of religious dress or the application of law. So, this is not about some newfangled, recently invented intellectual leap. Nor is it not relevant enough or not lived religion enough, as it clearly relates to critical contemporary matters of religion and belief in modern life that have public significance for our citizens. Our subject is riven with hermeneutics, if only we would draw it out and see it plainly. But too often in RE, sacred texts are encountered in fragments, decontextualized from their settings, and frequently used in clobber debates. This project set out to hear the many reports and studies that have thrown up warning messages about what we are doing with our sacred text, about whether we are learning from the discipline and scholarship of that study. But it's not enough to hear them, you have to respond, reflect on practice, and adapt or change what is done. And that's what our project sought to help find a way forward on. The Commission for RE final report inspired us with words given central status in the definition of worldview in that document. A worldview is a person's way of understanding, experiencing and responding to the world. It can be described as a philosophy of life or an approach to life. This includes how a person understands the nature of reality and their own place in the world. That's from page 4 and 26. It's unpacked on 26 and further unpacked on page 72. Those who think the report simply means adding humanism are mistaken. On page 29, the report relates way of understanding directly to disciplinarity, and it mentions sacred text scholarship. It writes, "The explicit academic study of worldviews provides an opportunity to develop a range of specific and general transferable skills. Skills that are intrinsic to the disciplines involved in the study of worldviews include analysing a range of primary and secondary sources, understanding symbolic language, using technical terminology effectively, interpreting meaning and significance, empathy, respectful critique of beliefs and positions, recognising bias and stereotype, and representing views other than one's own with accuracy." And that's central to the understanding of diversity. On page 30, the link between this and making sense of how different communities of interpretation are possible is underscored. Page 30, it says, "There's now a greater recognition that within each major tradition there are different communities of interpretation and different theological and philosophical approaches." Another advisor to the project, Professor Towie, director of the Aquinas Centre at St Mary's University and one of the original commissioners on the report, reminded us that the approach to interpreting sacred texts was often key to unlocking the self-understanding and practice of different denominations and different religious traditions today. The report continues that in the subject there needs to be significant rebalancing of the how of worldview with the what of worldview. How worldviews work in practice is as important as knowing the content of particular worldviews. That's from page 31. So, the proposition of the Commission contains within it a hermeneutical turn for the subject. This is why we thought it mattered to do the project with teachers. Texts and Teachers was a pilot study of 10 teachers in 7 contrasting schools who took a more hermeneutical approach in their classrooms, applying some professional development to their own curricula and adapting that for a sequence of lessons. The study was focused on teachers, their perspectives, and their experiences of their classrooms. The 2 free online outputs from that project are a findings report, which offers an accessible summary based on the interviews with the participants, and a practice guide, developed from some of the CPD material for the project participants, which offers teachers and curriculum writers development ideas for a more hermeneutical RE. These can be accessed through the nicer.org.uk website and through the links on social media. I pay tribute to my colleague Miss Katie Clemmy for her support of the teachers on this project, and the other advisors who supported us, including Dr. Philip Wood of Aga Khan University and Dr. Lynn Ravel of my own university, Canterbury Christ Church University. I am delighted that our research centre at Canterbury, the National Institute for Christian Education Research, has been able to work with advice from such a rich and diverse group of colleagues. It's significant to me that this has been a multi-worldview project team.